What's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 109 of the Finale podcast. Today, I'm joined by Nahum and Yossef to talk about the final week of the NFL regular season. So, guys, it's been a long season. Final week is finally here. Just how would you guys kind of summarize what your takeaways have been from this whole NFL season?
And I think takeaway as on a larger note, the NFL has been great. A lot of competitive football teams. I thought the NFC going into the year was a little bit behind the AFC, but I think some of those top tier teams have kind of floated to the top, and they've made it a real competition. So I know we had a conversation about that a couple weeks back, me and you, Markos, on one of these pods. So I'm pleasantly surprised by the NFC's play. I think that was a huge takeaway coming into the preseason was how good would they be? How competitive would those teams be? Of course, we knew the Lions coming in, but 49ers fell off, but the Eagles showed out a little bit stronger. The Vikings showed out a little bit stronger. The Packers, the NFC North in general, but major takeaway would be just that, and then the MVP battle, of course, is something that I'm going to remember. Between Josh Allen, who's a really one of my favorite quarterbacks in the league. Of course, he has all the talent, everything that he can do, but and then Lamar on the other end, who's just putting up godly numbers that it throwing the ball. So it's a lot different than his previous two MVPs. So they both have a real case, but major takeaways from the NFL season, I think, is going to be the how much better than the NFC was than we originally thought, and the MVP battle between Josh Allen and Lamar being one for the history books.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, just to add on to that, I feel like you hit most of it. But I just, as a Giants fan and like teams that aren't in playoff contention, like I think the NFL needs to look into like draft orders and like a draft lottery or something so I can actually watch football without cheering for my team to lose. I think it's pretty soulless and makes me really disengaged and emotionless, to be honest. But yeah, I think like teams just there's been so many bad teams, like the bottom 10 teams, they all have like horrible records. And then you have like the top like AFC teams and then the NFC North up there. So I don't know. It's a little weird this season, but it's definitely been entertaining for sure.
Yeah, that is true. The bottom of the league, like a number of those teams are like in the running or have been in the running for the number one pick. And obviously the Giants winning like pushed them all the way up to like sixth or something like that. So that's tough. But lottery would obviously, we've seen how the NBA draft lottery has made things pretty interesting over the years. If, the best or the worst team got the best player in the draft, like a lot of things would be different, when you look in past draft lotteries. So, I mean, I think it'd be a good idea for the NFL to look into, but it's also nice, like I guess having that worst record locks you in to whoever you want. So, I guess pros and cons to that. For me, though, I think I'll say the NFC North just has been like crazy for me because you come into the preseason and you look at it and it's like the Vikings are the team with no hope and rebuilding year and losing Kirk Cousins, all that. And I kind of bought into that. Like I'm not really expecting the Vikings to win too many games, but then you see what they're able to do. I actually just seeing them in the preseason, I'm like, okay, so undefeated in the preseason, that kind of is a good sign. Like that they'll probably, go over what they were expected. I think it was 6.5 is what they were expecting in the regular season. That big first game against the Giants, I'm like, wait, like, I don't think the Giants are like crazy or anything like that, but I thought the Vikings just ticked and then it just continued starting off the season 5-0. Then you had that little 2-game losing streak and what 9-game winning streak since. So it's like just surprised with the way the Vikings have played. The Lions, I mean, they've just taken to another level this year. Even last year, a really good team, but this year they're obviously along with the Vikings 14-2 and fighting for the top spot in the NFC. And then the Packers, I mean, they're a really good team as well. They haven't been able to beat the top teams in the NFC like the Vikings, Lions, or Eagles, but they're also like a really good team. So, and then the Bears, I mean, that's just a team I did not expect to be this bad. I thought they were going to be, one of those top three teams, especially with the way they started the season 4-2. But it seems like ever since that loss to Washington on that last touchdown play, and it just from there, man, it just ended badly for them, and of course led to firing the OC and then eventually Eberflus. So just a lot of different twists and turns to the NFC North this year, especially. And then some of the teams that were bad this year, you're not expecting it either. Like, definitely didn't expect the Cowboys to be as bad as they were this year. Um,
49ers.
the Bengals just fighting like how they are for a playoff spot in general. Like, I mean, I didn't expect them to be this bad, and the number of games that they just couldn't close this year has been pretty crazy to me. The
I
Chiefs
mean,
not looking overly impressive, but being the best team in the NFL by record, I think is pretty crazy and just speaks to, how good they are. So just a number of like different things I've seen in the NFL this season that's been pretty crazy. But yeah, I mean, week 18 is here, and of course, the teams like the Giants, of course, looking ahead to the draft and trying to find out what their future plans are going to be. And with all these teams at the bottom of the draft order, a lot can change, of course, even in this final week. So it'll be interesting to see like what happens and how things move in the off season leading up to NBA or NFL draft day. So yeah, that's just for me. But how about you guys for biggest takeaway in terms of just last week, week 17?
yeah. My biggest takeaway was probably the what is that Broncos Bengals game. Really, really fun ending. Bo Nix showing out what he could do. Nice little drive there to, put the Bengals, back on offense. And then my major takeaway is it's a disgrace that we can't see Joe Burrow in the playoffs. I mean, I know they still have a slither of hope. I think it is. Uh, I'm not sure. They might be bounced. I'm not sure, but odds are they're probably not going to make the playoffs. And I think that's the biggest disappointment, not to just like the AFC, but as a fan of just NFL in general, not seeing them in the playoffs. Joe Burrow's without a doubt having one of the greatest quarterback seasons. If you look at it in a vacuum, not being able to see that connection with him and Jamar and T, that might be the last time we see those three on a pitch. Is going to be this coming week. So it really hurts that they're not in the playoffs. I think I was like just so frustrated a couple weeks ago. I started blaming Joe Burrow for not winning, but man, that anger was misplaced. This team is awful. I think it's an awful organization who struggled to win before Joe Burrow, and the reason is the same reason why they suck now is they cheaped out on defense. weren't didn't That young defense that we talked about 2 3 years ago that made the Super Bowl got old, got expensive, not old but expensive, and they weren't willing to pay them. So I wonder how they handle T's situation. Probably, probably like they continue to handle these other situations. But it's just a shame that we won't see Joe Burrow in the playoffs this year, where we see a Lamar Jackson playing as great as he is, a Josh Allen playing as great as he is, Patrick Mahomes playing as great as he is. I want to see them boys go up against Joe Burrow, and we won't get that opportunity. So just that Eagle, I mean that Bengals Broncos game just reminded me of how much we're gonna miss that in playoffs.
Yeah, and they've been able to win. I think they're on like a 4 game winning streak right now, but it's of course too little, too late. It seems like they need the Broncos to lose this week against the Chiefs, who are going to be resting their starters, of course, and of course have the bye, so it makes sense for them. And then the Dolphins as well. They need to have them lose their game this week, and then they need to beat the Steelers, which is no easy thing to do. So yeah, it's just that's definitely tough with the way their season has gone. And I guess that leads me to ask you, like, do you think they should retain Zach Taylor? Because if I'm not mistaken, they missed the playoffs last year as well.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, I don't really think it's a coaching issue. But unfortunately, the way things work in professional sports is, you kind of start off with the head coach when you can't make any other moves. So I don't think he's necessarily the crux of the problem, and I don't think he'll resolve the issue at hand. I think this is a general manager issue. This is a leadership issue, even beyond the general manager, ownership issue. If they're not willing to make the proper moves that's required to build a real a real AFC contender, uh, there's not much you can ask. I don't care who you put there at head coach. I don't think it's going to change, the dynamic of your personnel. What do you think?
No, I definitely think he's a good coach, but just how the league goes, and the coach is usually the first domino to fall. But I think he's done well to put them in all these games, and I think it'd be a little harsh to let go of him. And like you said, you need the personnel to be able to succeed. They haven't really built out this team the right way after initially starting out on a really good note. When Jamar was a rookie and everything like that. So I think they just got to make sure that they give him one more shot. I feel like that'd be in their best interest, and actually build a competent team, not just offensively but defensively.
Yeah. And frankly, offensively, man, as long as you have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase,
Yeah.
everything else will play itself out. So,
I was
yeah,
gonna say, as far as coaching, like, yeah, you guys bring up valid points about him, but like, he has Joe Burrow and two elite wide receiver number ones. Like, he puts up the points, that's cool, but it speaks a lot that his defense and his special teams are garbage. Like, we can't forget his special teams, the kicker, how many missed kicks he's made.
right.
Like, I don't know if that falls on coaching, but something has to give. And then on defense, like, we know that your defense is the biggest weakness. I haven't seen no adjustments all year long.
Right.
So I mean, there like you put in a different coach there, like you're gonna see the same success. I'm 85% sure if they had Jamar, a good run game, and Joe Burrow, you're gonna put up points. Any competent NFL coach would do that. That's how I feel.
So what do you say? So you
I'm
think,
saying like the coaching he can go, and then we need an actual coach to coach there that can actually coach the defense too.
okay,
Right?
yeah,
Because I mean, with
I
that,
see what you're saying.
because with that offense, it's gonna coach itself
Right,
pretty much. Like,
right.
yeah, like you need a coach to call the plays, but like with that talent,
I agree. So what you're saying is like focus on maybe acquiring a more defensive-minded head coach, knowing that
possibly just because there's
right,
so much
right,
offense on that side of the ball.
right.
Um,
Your personnel is already leaning offensive, so you might
and
as
then
well.
if I was Zach Taylor, I would have been focused on defense this whole year. But I mean, defense looks like they're just getting ripped apart
Yeah.
each time. So
I get it. I
there's
just
schemes that you can adjust to even if you don't have the personnel. Is
yeah.
what I'm trying to say. Like the Giants did it last year. The Vikings are doing it this year. They don't have top notch guys, but their scheme is so good that they can actually,
Hey
put up
man,
some points on defense.
we got some Pro Bowlers, man.
Hey,
Relax, man.
congrats. You know
Relax,
what I'm
man.
saying? They worked hard for it, but like I'm talking
Yeah,
about
I
other
understand.
defenses too. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So
No, I hear you.
I don't know. A good coach is supposed to
Yeah.
adjust to that.
I think what Markos said is going to hold true. The first domino is going to fall, and it's going to be the head coach, unfortunately. Like, they're the easiest to blame, they're the easiest to replace. We'll see.
Yeah, I will say though, it's like you can always just hire a top-notch defensive coordinator, kind of like the Vikings did, because we've seen our defense like how trash it was. We were actually able to win those one-score games that the Bengals were unable to in that first year under KOC, but it still backfired, losing to the Giants in that playoff game, and it just unveiled all the problems that we were already kind of calling for. I remember like as early as week 11, after we got destroyed by the Cowboys, we were calling for Donatel to get out of here. So I think when you have that offensive-minded head coach that's actually, working well and has been able to make sure your offense is flowing at a high level, I think from there it's just like you need that one missing piece, and that's the defense. And I feel like unless you're hiring like a top-notch defensive coordinator to be your head coach, I don't think you should go for it. Like, I feel like it was the right situation when the Commanders brought in Dan Quinn because he's also a, culture guy, and I think that's obviously shown itself here in Washington. So I
You
feel like
think
unless you can hire like that top DC like to be your head coach like a Brian Flores or something like that, I don't know if there's many defensive coordinators right now that you'd bring in to be your head coach because I don't think anybody can just come in and fix your offensive issues because I don't think it's that simple.
how you feel about Mike Vrabel going to Cincinnati? They fired Zach Taylor in the season. Mike Vrabel goes there, gets the defense right, offense still flowing. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I think
I don't
I
know.
think
I don't know about head coach. I think why doesn't he just take a defensive coordinating job? Wasn't he a was he a defensive player?
it's a hard. Yeah, he was, but it's hard
Yeah.
to find a defensive coordinator
Why wouldn't
because
he
they
take a head coach job?
who Vrabel.
Vrabel.
He should.
He should.
He's not going to
He's
take.
gonna be the number one head coach prospect.
It's just hard to find defensive coordinators because they either stay in their system or they want a head coaching job, even though most of them shouldn't get one. So you need a culture guy. I agree with you, and I think Vrabel, he's a culture
He's
guy.
a culture guy.
So a defensive culture guy in Cincinnati would be a W.
Yeah, with the decent OC.
Yeah.
That's actually a good case.
No, that's true. I feel like they could easily just get rid of Zach Taylor for sure, but he's definitely going to be a sought after guy if he is going to be let go because I mean, I think he came from the Rams organization. I think they just swoop him up if they needed to. Like he's a good play caller, and I think he'd get another opportunity elsewhere. It's just unfortunate how the whole team building has gone with this team for sure. And they did get older, and guys just not producing at the same level. Guys not being there anymore. I mean, like
I
when you
feel
look
like
at it, when they won the Super Bowl or not went to the Super Bowl, like that first year, Joe Burrow's second year, and then Jamar's rookie year, it's like they didn't really have too many standout players on defense. I mean, they still had Trey Hendrickson, who they still have now, but it's like they didn't have too many standout players. They just had a really good scheme, and then they had players that like fit that scheme and looked really good in that scheme. Kind of like, I guess Nahum's alluding to with the Vikings and what they're doing with their personnel. Even though I think the Vikings have good personnel, you can make that same argument. When guys like Eli Apple and I'm trying to remember who they had back then, but like those sort of guys. I mean, they still had Bates, still had some guys there that were making plays, but they might not have been the upper echelon guys that like other teams had. But I think if you can find that sort of defensive coordinator to come in, he could make
And
some of your personnel look
Aaron
good.
Glenn, I feel like would be nice too from the Lions. Like he's
You said
gotten a
Aaron
lot.
Glenn
Yeah,
as a head coach.
I could see. I mean, I've heard talks. I don't know if he would go to Cincinnati, but I've heard talks for him. I mean, Brian Flores, like if he really wanted to, like he could try to apply for the job, and they would definitely look into it because he is a culture guy too. He's been a head coach before. The whole accusations with the whole racist thing,
Tua
and
Tua
yeah,
might disagree.
I mean, Tua, that
Too like,
comment. I think everybody gets a second chance. I think I really want to see John Gruden back in the NFL. Big fan of him, and I think he could definitely turn. He guys would want to really play for him. I think Zach Taylor, he's like a schematic guy who like he's not a leader of men. And me and Yosef were talking about that earlier before this pod about like you can tell what guys are leader of men and who isn't, and it's like hard to see that in some coaches.
mm,
That's why I feel like Ben Johnson wouldn't be a great coach, but he's a great play caller. So I mean, and also you can't overcome bad GMing, like
It's
and bad
hard.
ownership.
Very
So
hard.
it's tough.
I, I think that's the crux of it is like no matter who you hire for head coach, they can't bring in defense for you. They can't bring in a cornerback. They can't bring
But
in
he can be better.
an
I think
edge
Zach
rusher.
Taylor can be better too.
Yeah.
Right.
I get it, but it's like I think Brian. If you're looking at Brian Flores, like he's not one of the like pinnacle minds on defense. Like those, they're not like Brian Flores's don't grow on trees. Like it's hard to like create a defensive scheme that's better than the sum of the parts. And
For sure.
that is the goal of coaching ultimately is to bring a team together that outperforms their individual pieces. But on defense without personnel, man, it's asking for a lot. And I think
The
yeah.
Vikings on paper, like they didn't look too good on defense.
We
as far
didn't
as,
have that like
players.
marquee like
For sure.
superstar defender
But like
by
the
any means.
scheme fit
Yeah.
everybody perfectly, and everybody got
But we
boosted.
have like the thing about the Vikings is we have personnel spread around where like we might not have that A+ talent
For
at
sure.
one place, but we have
It's
a
a whole
whole
bunch of B's, B minuses.
A-
For
right.
sure.
Yeah, and
For
that
sure.
that you can get it done with the
I
team
think
like that.
Cincinnati, if they hit on draft order, right, like and they draft heavy on defense, they could flip that around pretty quickly.
Will
Too.
they though? Like
That's the thing, though.
their
That's
O
on
line,
GMing
their
too.
O line is so expensive
Yes.
and it's not good.
Yeah,
like
that's why you got to draft young defenders.
yeah,
For sure.
I don't know. It's
That's how
going to
you
be
fix
hard.
it. That's how
But
you fix
also,
it.
it's like you're jeopardizing the offense by, what I'm saying, moving away from paying O linemen.
That's true.
Even if they weren't that good, like, at least they've proven it before. It's like,
As a leader of men, though, I really didn't like the whole Jamar Chase dilemma situation in the middle of the season. I was a Jamar Chase fantasy owner, and I sold him away because I thought he was going to crash out on the team. I didn't think he respected the coach, and it was apparent in a few games. So, like, as a respected coach that's been there for a while, you would think Jamar has more class than that. I don't know if that's a Jamar thing or if that's a Zach Taylor thing, but that was definitely something to note. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it'll be a interesting off season for them.
I mean,
Um,
Eberflus is out of here, of course, already. What other head coaching
yeah,
opportunities will there be this year? Look at this
there's gonna be a
offseason.
lot.
I mean,
Jets.
of course, there'll be some guys probably let go Monday, like
Right.
how usually goes after that Week 18 game. So yeah, the Bears is obviously an attractive option. I think they're looking for an offensive-minded head coach, of course, for Caleb Williams.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Jets, I think one of you guys mentioned it. That's definitely a spot for sure. It's New York, so that's just enough of an attraction.
Brian Dable? Question mark?
He's not leaving.
Oh, the Giants. Ooh, I mean
That's
Probably not.
I'd like to see him get another shot, like one more year, just with
get
a
another,
little
but they're
decent
not gonna
decent
get a
team.
quarterback this year,
What do you
so
think about like the Mike Tomlin, Shanahan?
they're safe. All of them are safe.
You think they're safe?
Yeah, for sure.
Mike Tomlin?
I've heard Mike Tomlin like I've been hearing that all year, frankly.
He's safe, dude.
And it's just the idea is like we were so mediocre, we have no chance to win the Super Bowl with this team. It's like how many years are we going to continue to do this?
They're thinking about trading for
No,
Colin. You know
I don't
that?
think. I think those guys are safe. Those guys are too good. Mike
Oh,
Tomlin's not had a losing record in like years,
Yeah,
and
I
Shanahan
agree.
is just they have these random years in San Fran where they just don't win, but
Yeah,
like they immediately regroup and then they come back, you know. I think a large part of the reason why they weren't good this year is the injuries, and coming back next year they'll be just fine. Like last time they had a
this
top
bad
pick,
though.
they had
If you're
Bosa. I
the
think they
Bears
drafted
GM,
Bosa.
if you're
Yeah.
the Bears GM, would you
Mm.
trade for a coach?
No, I just find somebody. I think Ben Johnson's somebody you can look at.
You need somebody
Um,
proven that you can't waste your time with Caleb Williams. Like throw a
no,
third.
Ben Johnson's perfect. I feel like a lot of people had those same question marks about Kevin O'Connell too in Minnesota. Like when you're offensive coordinator for Sean McVay, a lot of people won't give you respect, you know? So I think you just have to like go in there and just, just look at it. I mean, they had the opportunity to get Harbaugh, who's obviously Harbaugh's a good coach too, but Kevin O'Connell was just like
Yeah.
a dime a dozen. Like it's crazy how
We,
they, that's like a gem. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
those don't fall on trees either.
He's gonna be
So
a lifetime with Minnesota.
Thinking back to that offseason when we were considering KOC or
Jim
uh
Harbaugh. You guys, I mean, Harbaugh would have been. Harbaugh's
yeah,
cooking
I
too.
was in the
Harbaugh's good.
Harbaugh
No, so
camp at
Harbaugh's
the
good.
time. I was in the Hardball camp at the time
Your
because of
offense would have looked so much different
it
though.
would have looked ugly. It would have
Justin
been
Jefferson probably wouldn't be happy
we'd
either.
probably get a running back way better than we
And
had.
a whole new O line.
Yeah.
Stout defense though.
But what I was trying to get to with that is like when we hired KLC, I think to your point, Marcos, like I think you made a point about like Ben Johnson. He's more of a play caller, not maybe a head coach. Can he really foster the culture that is required to hold people accountable? All of that. Like those are the same questions I had about KLC, Marcos. When he was coming in, the reason why I liked Harbaugh more than KLC is like Harbaugh was proven in the locker room. Is KOC going to be able to bring that culture, bring that accountability that that you need in a rough sport like the NFL? We
It's
probably
tough because like a lot of these offensive coordinators aren't proven because they're just behind the scenes. You know, a lot of these guys, you didn't hear about Sean McVay, you didn't hear about
might.
a bunch of guys that get promoted,
Yeah,
and
before.
that's their proving ground when they get the opportunity, and then they flourish with it, or some just they don't. You know, you look at the head coaches that were hired. There was a bunch of them that were hired the same offseason as
Yeah.
O'Connell. I think Dable was one of them. I think Gannon was one of them.
How about Mike? Mike from
Eberflus.
Miami?
And
McDaniel was one of them. You know, there's like a number of them, and you can see like who is still standing. I think Salah might have been one of them. Um,
Salah's a
so
great defensive coordinator. I think,
defensive coordinator, yeah.
yeah, I think as a head coach, even he was fired prematurely. But sorry,
Hmm.
what was your point?
No, but actually, now that I think about it, he was a defensive coordinator
Raheem Morris
before
was
that. Raheem Morris, nah, because he came. This is his first year in Atlanta.
here. Yeah.
Yeah, but there were some guys that they were just like, okay, they're not there anymore with their team. So I mean, you just gotta. Not everybody hits on their guy. The Vikings just have a good way of finding the head coaches. I mean, Zimmer stayed here pretty long. Kevin O'Connell was the guy they found
He
staying
was
here pretty
connected to
long.
Quincy, though, right?
Huh?
He was connected to Quasi,
Ooh,
KOC.
KOC? I don't know. I don't know what their connection was, but also we also hired the Quasi that same offseason, and we were considering Ryan Poles from Chicago, and see how it worked out, you know? So it's like the Vikings hit on those two guys, and man, not every organization is gonna do it, but you can't like
you
just
think
go
we hit
for
on
an
Quinn?
experienced guy that just like has a more of a resume or a track record and assume it's gonna work, you know? So I think you got to find the next great thing at the same time.
You guys got rid of Rex Spielman kind of quick. I kind of was a fan of him.
Quick.
I mean,
He's
not
No,
10
quick, but like
years.
not quick,
no,
but
he's here like '06.
Yeah.
I hated to see him go. He was
I
good.
was happy. I was so cool off him. He couldn't draft a quarterback for his life, and I was really fed up. I was fed up of that. I can't
I
lie.
think that's the only part that I didn't like about him.
Yeah,
But
it's a
that is,
pretty big part.
you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Teddy could have been something, but we'll never know. But anyways, I forgot whose takeaway that was. I think that was Yosef's on the Bengals.
yeah, right. Go ahead.
Okay, now
The takeaway would probably be that there's I got two under one game. So the first is Michael Penix is going to be something. The second is Jaden Daniels. We've been having this argument all day back and forth. Jaden Daniels is a star and he could be a top 10 quarterback
Say what you want to say.
as far as like in this whole NFL history. if he goes down that same trajectory that he's doing right now. He says he's not comparable to Lamar
I
at
didn't say
all.
comparable. I didn't
No,
say
you
at all.
said
I
you
said
said
he
this,
will
the
not be as good.
potential growth is
All right.
not going to be at
How
Lamar's
about you
level.
We
speak for yourself?
gotta we gotta like understand though, because like the same stuff was flying around with CJ Stroud, so we just gotta,
You're right. You're right. You're
you
right.
know,
Okay. Okay.
pump
He's
the
going to be
brakes.
a star though.
That's exactly what I said,
That's
Marcos.
my takeaway. And then my other takeaway is Raheem Morris is the wrong coach for Michael Penix. He's just the wrong coach. Like I was watching that game, and they could have won that game. If they win that game, they're in the. I think they're in the playoffs. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure, right? And it's 30 seconds left. They're at like the 50, and the time's just ticking, ticking, ticking. Call a timeout. You have two timeouts.
Call timeout.
Like I play Madden, I would have got that right, right?
Yeah.
And so they ask him at the press conference, and he's just word salad everywhere. He doesn't even know what he's saying. Like it sucks that like I feel bad for Atlanta fans because it's like okay, you got your quarterback, and this coach is not it, and it's obvious because this is not his first mess up. There's been multiple,
Hmm.
so that sucks. But shout out Jaden Daniels, you know he's balling right now.
Oh man, yeah, he's a really good quarterback. I'm excited to see what he does in the playoffs for sure.
What?
I
Did you
I
watch that
think
throw?
you said what
Did you watch that Michael Penix throw to
to
like tie
who
the game up and
to
like
Pitts?
2 seconds left?
Who was it to?
Who was it to? Who was it? Kyle Pitts. It was a bullet.
Yeah, for a touchdown.
Yeah,
No, yeah, I saw that.
that's some dog. Hey, that's a dog right there. Second career start.
I mean, we knew he has an arm. He can make that throw. He's made it a
But
bazillion times.
it's so crazy to me that they had Kirk start all these games when they could have saved their season. And then when their season's actually on the line, they just malfunction on coaching. Like it's crazy to me.
Honestly, I do think Penix, like to your point about like we saw something in Penix, I think we did. And ultimately, he's an older quarterback. He's a more experienced quarterback. In my opinion, paying Kirk Cousins that money this offseason
It's crazy.
and then drafting him is just like I know one happened before the other, but it's like, man, and it's no guarantee you could have got Penix, but they did the right thing in my opinion. It doesn't matter who your quarterback is right now. I don't care who you signed. They drafted the right guy. And ultimately, as a Vikings fan, we were drafting a couple picks behind them. I wanted Penix more than I wanted JJ, and I'm gonna be
They
honest
didn't.
about that.
They could have drafted the right guy, but they didn't make the right move with getting Kirk and with that
Yeah,
money.
but that was backwards. You know what I'm saying? And also, I agree. Ultimately, that's dysfunction written all over. But I think the organization is one that can turn it around. One more year. They only signed him to really a 2 year deal. And what we've seen with Bo Nix and the Broncos this year, more than anything, is cut your quarterback, and you will still have a good chance to make the playoffs with the proper starter, rookie, or whatever it is. So I think like I think teams have been super hesitant about eating dead cap in the past. But you know, if the Broncos showed us anything, it's just make the right choice. Like there's a sunken cost fallacy, right? The fact that once you've made an investment, just because you made that investment up until this point doesn't mean you should continue to throw money at it. At some point, you just have to cut your loss and make the right decision today. And I think that's what the Falcons did last week. And ultimately, they're going to eat that dead cap, in my opinion, and they're going to let him go next season, this offseason. And they're going to build around that 10, 15 extra $1 million that they wouldn't have had if they didn't cut him. And they'll eat the rest, in my opinion. So I do think Penix is the future, though. What do you think about his performance week one? I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago, Marcus.
Penix, I mean, last couple of weeks, I mean, he's shown why he's probably should have been in there a lot sooner. I feel like that cost them their season as much as anything because, like you said, they didn't cut their losses with Kirk. They kind of just continued it and just regardless of what it was, kept him in there. They kept him in the Minnesota game at the end of it, even though it was over, just because Kirk used to play for Minnesota and they wanted, they didn't want to take him
They didn't
out
want
while
to shame
just because he played in Minnesota. They didn't want it to be like a bad look or whatever. But I think it was just a bunch of just missed decision and speaks to Nahum's point about Raheem Morris and, those decisions that are honestly just proved to be costly. And, they already beat the Buccaneers twice, so just winning out would have been enough for them to make the playoffs. But now they need the Buccaneers to lose to the Saints, which is highly unlikely, and it's going to cost them their season, and that's something that could be a fireable offense, honestly. With even everything that they've done with the Kirk Cousins contract, that could go as high up as management, and letting go of some of those guys. So it's like pretty tough decision. But I mean, Penix is Penix. He's a really good player, and they didn't mess up on that. That's definitely the quarterback of the future there, and they've been trying to find a guy for a little while now, and I'm sure that's the guy that they have here in Penix. But yeah, I think he's a really good player. My takeaway though, I'm gonna go on the Viking side, of course. Uh, and I put a I put a video on TikTok about are the Vikings Super Bowl ready? And I just like green screened it because they had a segment on the this
LeSean McCoy.
yeah, the Acho had a segment with Shady McCoy and Chase Daniel and James Jones on that this Fox show, and they were like, "Are the Vikings Super Bowl ready?" And pretty much, LaShawn McCoy is just like, "Nah." Like Sam Darnold's their quarterback. There's no correlation with Super Bowl ready and Sam Darnold being a quarterback. Pretty much is what he was saying. And I mean, I'm just like, I couldn't disagree more with that because I feel like the way Sam Darnold's playing, we talk about Pro Bowlers. Sam Darnold's a Pro Bowl quarterback in the NFC among three players: Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff, Sam Darnold. He's had a really good season this year. First season with the team, 14 wins, one of the best quarterback seasons in Vikings history, even better than Brett Favre. And I thought Brett Favre's was good. So it's like definitely the best quarterback season I've seen out of a Vikings quarterback. And it's just historical stuff, and he's really flourishing. And it's not just on KOC; it's also on him. So I think on top of that, with what the Vikings already have, not just having a really good offense, we talk about the Bengals having that, but they have a really good defense, making all these guys look good. Van Ginkel and Jonathan Grenard, both Pro Bowlers, while Daniil Hunter is not. Like, just look at the management decisions there. It's like
Wasted.
both your edge rushers are Pro Bowlers, and it's like it's crazy. And then you have Blake Cashman, who's not a Pro Bowler, but he's a really good player and undefeated with the Vikings this year in the games he's played. And then you look in the back end, Harrison Smith, nothing needs to be said there. Cam Bynum, Josh Metellus, Byron Murphy is a Pro Bowler. Like we have a Pro Bowl corner in Minnesota. Like it's crazy. I mean, we just have a really good team going right now, and the momentum's at an all time high. So I think they're for sure Super Bowl ready, and that's my takeaway from them beating the Green Bay Packers. Because I feel like in the past that's a big time game, a game that you could see the Vikings lose, but they just controlled it from start to finish and made the big time plays when they needed to, responded to adversity when the Packers responded and were down 27 to 10 and made it 27 to 25, and they had the big drive at the end there to close it out with the pass to Cam Akers. So I think they're a Super Bowl ready team. 14 wins, two losses. I mean, enough is said there. I don't think you need to doubt Sam Darnold. And yeah, he hasn't played in the playoff game, but I feel like it's almost that thing where when he does have a bad game, they're gonna just come back, and all the haters are gonna come and say it's Sam Darnold. Like this is the same Sam Darnold we knew. But he's just playing at a really high level. I think he just needs some respect on his name. And, now you even hear stuff about JJ McCarthy trade talks, which is another whole different conversation. So, I mean, just a really good season from the Vikings right now, man. I just feel like they're a Super Bowl ready team.
Just really briefly, like if you're a GM, like let's say you're the GM of a team that needs a quarterback. What are you giving up to get JJ if you're not going to be able to get Shador or Cam?
I mean, I trade a first round pick because realistically, the Vikings, they traded for JJ McCarthy, that pick. They traded up to get him. So I think you got to just, with the fact that
First
he
round,
hasn't played a regular season game, you got to,
first
you got to
round pick
trade.
for something you don't like. You don't know how he looks, and he's been sitting for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the price because he hasn't played at all.
But like a second round pick would be more reasonable. I feel like.
Because the
Uh,
Vikings made an investment and they haven't been proven that their investment was a bad one. So his value is his value. Only thing that's happened to him is he got hurt. But the Vikings can hold on to him if they want to. But I think the price has got to be up there.
Yeah. And we do. Where do you think he ranks amongst the two quarterbacks this year at the top, Shador and Ward?
Oh, JJ?
Yeah. If he was
Uh,
coming up this year, coming off of the year he had with the Wolverines 2 years ago, say he got injured this year in his senior year, and now he's entering the draft injured. What would you say?
yeah, just unbiased perspective. I think he is going to be three when you look at Shador and Cam Ward because those guys are just like, bigger names and everything like that. Like JJ wasn't the biggest name last year. He fell for a reason. I feel like the Vikings identified him because they felt like he could be a perfect match. So I think it's an organizational sort of thing. But when you look at the top of the draft, I mean, that wasn't the guy that the Vikings picked number one. I would say they probably ranked Drake May higher, which is why they tried to trade up for him. But I'm sure that JJ McCarthy was like number two probably on their board. So I feel like when you look at the top of this draft, I think Cam Ward and Shador, like those guys are you know, at the top for a reason. Yeah, they haven't won like JJ won in college, but it doesn't matter when it comes to NFL scouting. I mean, Caleb Williams didn't win anything in college besides the Heisman, so it's like I think these teams are just trying to find like the stars, the superstars, and those guys can obviously be really good quarterbacks too. But I think JJ is like a match, like not like a disrespectful way where it's like, yeah, he's a game manager, but it's like he matches the Vikings culture and what he wants to do, and I think that's why they identified him. And same thing goes for Sam Darnold when they looked at him and gave him 10 mil when he didn't even play a game last year. So I
Yeah.
think it's about matches, but for like an organization at the top of the draft, I don't think you're gonna pick JJ McCarthy.
Okay.
Thank you for the unbiased take right there, because he said that JJ McCarthy would be
Over both of
first.
them.
Yeah,
No, I just have to. I feel like just
I don't
nah,
think
just
they're that talented.
realistically, I don't think so.
I don't think they're that talented, to be honest. I think they both would have fell around him and Bo Nix last year. And if they were thrown into last year's class, they would be around 10 to 15, 10 to 20 as well. That's kind of where the take originated. But
Ooh, okay.
I mean,
I think that's
Penix,
I don't know.
you think they would have either of them would have went over Penix, let alone the top three?
for sure.
Yeah,
Shador.
over Penix because age is with the thing with Penix and injury history. So like from a GM perspective, probably gonna go with the other two over him. But I think he's in that conversation with they're in that conversation with like where Drake May fell around the three pick. I think that's where you can look at it.
Whoa.
That's fair.
I see Drake May, Caleb Williams, and McDaniels or Daniels as like a clear echelon ahead of both Shador and Cam Ward coming into this year.
That's fair, but I feel like those two. Okay, I'll give you Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams, but Drake May, I think that's where you can look at it and be like, okay,
I think Drake May is one of the better. I think he Drake May might be better than Caleb. Like after this season, at what I've
no,
seen,
I mean I'm not even talking about like because if we did a redraft, that's a completely different story. But we're not doing a
you're talking
redraft.
about prospects.
Yeah, we're
Prospects.
talking about like when they came in, like because if we're doing a redraft, and Bo Nix is up there, but like when we talk
No,
about
but
prospects, yeah,
all right.
a redraft, Bo Nix is probably like because he's offensive rookie of the year candidate. But like if we're talking coming in, when you look at what Shador did in college, one of the better quarterbacks in the nation. I think he won the award for that. And
Yeah,
then Cam Ward's obviously a Heisman candidate. I mean, Drake May didn't do that. So I think when you look at it like that, plus he has a star value. They have their big names and everything like that. I think that's also what an organization looks at, and I think that's why New York or Las Vegas wants a guy like that.
right. Okay, I just have a take on your what you were talking about with the Vikings, just showcasing that there. I think one of the points that Shady was making on that podcast, I watched you react to it on TikTok earlier today, actually, and then he was talking about like some good guys have bad days and some bad guys have good days, and right now we're seeing a bad guy with the good days, referring to Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
What I think he fails to understand in that clip is is how much coaching might play a factor into that. And I think a lot of these guys, I think I respect Shady for saying what he said because I think a lot of these guys in the national media don't believe in Sam Darnold and were ready to pick the Packers last week because of that. And I think going into the playoffs, they'll be ready to pick against the Vikings because of
No,
that.
no.
You don't
I
think
haven't
so?
heard no one go against the Vikings like
Oh
that.
no, I guess after
Like
the
even
Packers
before the
game, it
Packers,
changed up.
I've heard a lot of glazing on the Vikings lately.
I
Like a
think that
lot.
was post Packers game.
That
Pre
was
Packers game, they were
pre-Packers
I
game.
think there was a lot of split. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's 50-50. These teams are so even, but their quarterbacks are a little bit I trust Gerald Jordan Love over Sam Darnold." I was hearing a lot of that coming into the Packers game where like if you look at these two rosters and look at who they've lost to, you see
Yeah.
that like the Packers have they're not as good of a team as the Vikings are. But yeah, people were picking the Packers because of that quarterback discrepancy.
I've
Yep.
heard glazing on the Vikings though
Yeah.
before all this, just based on the record and how they've been looking.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? No
Right.
one thought the Vikings were going to be an underdog.
Mhm.
Yes, they might have thought they were equally matched a little bit, but
I think I do see Glaze on the national media, but I still see people like hesitant due to Sam Darnold. Like Sam Darnold is the reason why people don't believe, even though the roster and
he
what we've
should be an
showed off,
MVP candidate, low key.
frankly.
He
And
should
I
be.
mean, too many interceptions for that with Josh and Lamar in the mix.
If
But
he had a few more touchdowns, I think you
yeah,
could make it work.
yeah. But ultimately, my point is that like I think people think of Sam Darnold as a bad quarterback having a good moment, where I think of him as like a young quarterback developing into something that he would have become if he didn't get drafted into bad situations. I think right. I was telling Marcos, I mean Nahum about this before we hopped on, but I was listening to Ryan Russillo. I've been listening to him a few years, and he's been tracking something over the past like 4 or 5 years lately. And when he first started tracking this a couple years ago, he talked about how quarterbacks who get drafted very high in the first round and then move on to their second or third team never have success in the history of the NFL. And it's now for the first time in the NFL where we've seen multiple cases of that: a Jared Goff, a Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith, and now Sam Darnold having success on their second, third team for some folks. And I think what that really speaks to is the nature of how the NFL currently has been just throwing young quarterbacks out there straight out of college with no real preparation into these bad organizations that have bad teams that were able to draft that high. And that's causing a lot of quarterbacks who actually do have talent and have the ability to become these, Drew Brees himself was benched, and then got injured and traded, of course, and he became a Hall of Famer. How many Hall of Famers are being thrown into the Jets lineups, into the Carolina Panthers lineups, and wasting their careers and damaging them for good? So ultimately, I think Sam Darnold is something of a symptom of that, where he was thrown into a bad organization and then sent to another bad organization. And then finally last year with the 49ers, oh, we see this guy can make the throws. Why does Shanahan like him so much? Why does KOC like him enough to get him into the offseason? And now this year we see, of course, the MVP caliber season he's having now. So I think Sam Darnold having that early bad performance in his career is a lot. So speaking on the dynamic of quarterbacks and the expectations that NFL teams have nowadays, which is unrealistic and is historically unprecedented. So it's like we have to give these guys time, and smart offensive minds that can see quarterback talent from a mile away, like KOC was with Sam Darnold, will give these guys a try and they'll continue to succeed. So, man, I'm all here for Sam Darnold. I really do think this is more of a development arc than it is like a exciting, a blimp in his sad career.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's get into the topics. Like I said, college football playoff. I know we're not all the biggest college football fans here. We don't talk about it too much, but how much have you guys been tuning into the playoffs?
Man, I caught like the Ohio State game. That's all I have under my belt.
Yesterday?
Yeah,
Okay. That was a good one.
that was a good one. Yeah.
Now?
I watched snippets here and there, but nothing crazy. I just tuned in for the Colorado game to see how Shador was coming, and it was ugly. And then I tuned into Cam Ward, and he sat out second half. And then I was like, this is why I don't watch college football.
I mean,
So
yeah. I don't know why he said it. I think it was for draft purposes, but
it was because he hit the record of like all time touchdown passes, and
yeah,
like, I'm done.
he got
Which is
he got some heat for that.
okay.
Wasn't a good look, but yeah, no. I watched a little bit. Uh I was mainly watching because ASU, where I obviously currently attend, they were in it. They had a really good season this year. Had their game against Texas yesterday where they almost won. They came back from like 16 down. It was
Adam was nice.
24, yeah, 24 to 8. And then they were down 16 and came back with, scores and 2-point conversions on both. And then went into overtime, took the lead. And then on a 4th and 13 play to win the game, they allowed a touchdown in overtime. And then the way overtime works in college football, you get you each get an opportunity, and then the team that just had the opportunity goes again to start for the next phase of overtime, the second overtime. Then they scored on their first play of the second overtime, and then ASU threw a pick and then sealed the game there. But I mean, it was just a really good game. I think that's definitely the most compelling game of the playoffs so far because the first round was blowouts everywhere. Second day or the second round, Ohio State, that was a blowout. Penn State, kind of a blowout against Boise. But ASU Texas was a really good game. There is a controversial targeting call that people are talking about right now where there was it seemed like a clear targeting where helmet to helmet, they call that in college and they eject a player for that. And we've seen in the past that looked like textbook targeting. I see a bunch of refs on Twitter. The one dude who goes on CBS, Gene Steratore, whatever his name is. He was saying that's targeting. Um, so that was a costly call. Scatterboo, like you guys mentioned, that man is definitely NFL bound. The way he was playing, like I think almost 100 yards
Here's the thing:
receiving,
the
over 100
Vikings
yards
need a
rushing.
running back. He
Huh?
could go over there. The Vikings might get him.
He,
Like y'all need a running back, and you
yeah,
guys
no,
aren't
he's.
empty.
We do need a running back. That's definitely for sure. I mean, and there's. I was looking today at like there's a graphic of like the running backs in this draft, and it's a deep class. So I think he's definitely a guy that a lot of teams are targeting with the way he's was able to play. A lot of people question like Big 12 teams and how they fare against the top teams like SEC schools or Big 10 schools. And Texas is an SEC school, and the way he was able to run against them, I mean that's just very impressive. And I think he's going to be among the top running backs available in the 2025 draft. But yeah, he was going crazy. And then Sam Levitt, the quarterback for ASU, and Quinn Ewers, quarterback for Texas, they're kind of going at it too. They both had really good games yesterday. And then Ohio State, Jeremiah Smith, he's a freshman receiver for Ohio State. Man, people are talking about him like he's like the next coming of Julio or something. Because like they're saying if he could come out now, he'd be the number one overall pick with the way he was playing. I think he had over 100 yards in the
At
first
half.
half against Oregon. Dude, no, Ohio State just have something about them with the receivers. I mean, it's them and LSU when you look at the wide receiver you.
Eligible
Yeah.
this year?
He's a
Huh?
rookie. He's a
Well, I was asking if he's eligible.
Oh no, he's a freshman in college. So yeah, he's 18, 19 or something like that.
I've heard
So
the Alabama dude too. That's pretty nice.
yeah, he came in a year early. He was 17 in college this year. So Ryan Williams, yeah.
That's insane talent. Wow.
No, it's dude, like these I don't know, man. It's just
Yeah.
continuing to change the game with everything that's happening in college football right now. But yeah, the receivers just keep coming out, being elite, which is obviously good for the league because I feel like some teams need that. Not every team has an elite receiver, so I think soon that will change. It's going to be like how in the NBA where every team has a star. You know,
Mhm. You
because
need
there's
one
just so
now.
many good receivers you can find, and it's
Yeah.
almost kind of like running backs where you can find them in any round too.
Right. I mean, Brian Robinson Jr. looks like one of the best quarterbacks. I mean, one of the best wide receivers that was drafted, and he was a late round. I mean, a late first rounder. So, yeah. What do you think about the playoffs? The college playoffs changing from a 4 seed to the 12 seed. What do you think about that?
I think it's been good. The first round I feel like was just probably not um, the best, just because I feel like a lot of like teams are outmatched when you look at the way they were matched up. Um, and then that led to like a blowout in every single game in the first round. But the second round, I think it's a lot more evenly matched. But there's still blowouts. It's just tough. Usually the top four close, so that's why the four team has been successful. But you look at teams in the past who have felt like they've been snubbed, and that's why the 12 teams actually help them at least get a shot. You are seeing these teams get outmatched, like Boise State when they match up against Penn State. It doesn't really look fair in certain cases when Ashton Genty is not able to have the same success when he goes against those big guys in the trenches. And that's just also kind of what happened with ASU, where a Big 12 school doesn't always match up with the SEC school. I mean, those guys they got big boys in the trenches. They got 300 pounders at D tackle. It's pretty
Right.
tough. So
Right.
I feel like you at least want to give them a shot. So I think the 12 team has been good in the first year. They might find ways to tweak it over time, but I think it's going to be proven to be a good idea for them.
Yeah. Man, I think these running back like centric offenses, like you can't, like that's impossible playing against the SEC. You need to be able to throw the ball, and it was kind of it's just that was gross watching Aston Genty run into like a box of 9 people. Like,
Mhm.
what are we doing every single time? And they just kept feeding him up the middle because that's their whole identity. It's like your quarterback needs to be able to exploit the one-on-one matchups, and that was just not on the play sheet, which is just so college. But
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true. All right. And then lastly, topics wise, we'll kind of go through this pretty quick because the Timberwolves Boston game just started. But Vikings Lions preview. Of course, very big game, 214 and two teams uh, fighting for the 1 seed and the 5 seed. It's just like, loser gets the 5 seed, travels on the road first week of the playoffs. Loser gets the first round bye. So, what are your guys' expectations for what's to come on Sunday night?
Man, the best game of the regular season is what I'm hoping for. We will see how it actually ends up playing out. But man, what I've been watching from both of these teams has been nothing short of spectacular. Both offenses are mesmerizing. The Lions, of course, with their amazing play caller Ben Johnson, being able to make them even better than they were last year somehow. And then Brian Flores on this side, that's the real matchup I'm looking for. I think Sam Darnold and that depleted defense, they'll be able to put up points on them. So I think it really comes down to that Ben Johnson versus Brian Flores, you know, back and forth. Who gets the best of who? And ultimately, I think if Brian Flores is able to make a couple key stops, we don't need to, we don't need to do a shutout or anything. But as long as Flores gets those, good key stops and those key moments, I think that'll be the big difference between the Lions Vikings. So I'm just eager to see if that will happen or not. Of course, their offense is going and they're red hot, but their defense is also allowing a lot of points. And I think the Vikings and their offense is rolling right now. So that's the worst combination as a Lions fan to be going into. So overall, though, I do think, like I mentioned, with all the defensive injuries that the Lions are having, they're kind of trending a little bit downwards, I would say. And the Vikings are trending a little bit upwards with just the games that Sam Darnold have been having recently. And their defense has been letting up more points recently. The Vikings has. So this matchup is just two really good teams that I think didn't expect to be fighting out for the first seed when you first saw this, release the schedule get released early on in the year. But now we're seeing it, and I think there's a lot to be excited about. This is a real playoff moment. I think this is one of the most high stakes regular season games that I can remember. And I think the NBA can learn something about, how to properly manage, big games and how to market them and how to make them flexed on Sunday Night Football like the NFL has. So I think it's just great overall. Great move by the NFL and should be an exciting game to watch. But yeah, man, it's essentially an extra bonus playoff game for all of us fans. Thoughts on
Yeah,
I'll,
Nahum.
I'll listen to this, Marcos.
Oh, you want me to go?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think you hit a lot of the key points there. I feel like it's a matchup of KOC versus Aaron Glenn, and then of course Ben Johnson and Brian Flores, where the offenses are among the top in the league right now for both teams. And you look at the Detroit Lions defense are depleted, but they're able to make key plays. Um, and you look at the Vikings defense, they are really good right now, and they also get takeaways. I think both these teams get takeaways. With the Vikings, I feel like that's going to be pivotal in this matchup because of how good the Lions' offense is, and seems like they can score on almost every single drive, and you never know when they're going to come at you with a trick play as well. So that's going to be something you have to watch out for. Um, the Lions, I mean, they beat you in so many different ways, and it's just so tough. So I feel like the offense they can't hurt themselves in this one. Got to kind of make sure you're ticking like you were on Sunday against Green Bay and how you have been over these past 9 games in the win streak. But it's going to be such a good game just for the neutral perspective. I feel like for
right?
Vikings fans, I'm going to be sweating because it's like the stakes. You know what I mean? Like it's so tough to to kind of come in there and be like, especially with a close game, that's going to be the stress levels are going to be at an all-time high. But I feel like the Vikings are very capable of winning this game with the way the defense of the Lions is playing. They're able to, make some big plays. They just got to make sure they don't hurt themselves as they did in the first matchup because I think some of the turnovers and the self-inflicted errors hurt them and their inability to close that one out because they had every chance to do so when they stormed back and took the lead in that game. So it's going to be a big one traveling on the road for this game. I feel like the Lions are also a team where I mean they haven't lost a road game at all this year. Both of their losses have come at home. So I don't think they mind going on the road, but they're also of course trying to win this game. We saw how they came into a meaningless game in week 17 against the Niners and they, had a shootout 40 to 34 I think the score was. So they just come in and win every single game. That's just the identity this team has. They don't have any sort of winners. I mean, they have winners mentality, but they're not like too big. They're not too big headed. They're a humble
No.
team, but they also like, you know, they're a resilient group. I think that's just the way to define them. They're there for each other, have each other's backs. And really, a way that I can summarize that was with the little Jawan Jennings scuffle with Taron Arnold, and they were kind of like going at it a little bit. He slapped him on the face. Kirby Joseph came in, pushed him over the edge. It was just like, damn, man, this team just they have a lot of fiery characters, and of course the Vikings have history with Kirby Joseph, as do a couple other teams. So a lot of
Yeah,
different matchups to look into. But I'm expecting the Vikings to come in there with you know every intention to get the number one seed. They feel like they can win this game. I think Sam Darnold is playing better than he was at that point in the season as well. Even though the Vikings were undefeated going into that Lions game the first time, man, I'm excited for it. It's going to be
yeah,
a really good quarterback battle as well. Running back battle. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs has held his own all season long, and even more so now. It's showing without Dave Montgomery. Receiver battle. Look at the receivers on both sides with Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then Hawkinson, Addison, Jefferson, and those guys weren't called as much as maybe Jalen Nailor was the other game. So it's just like so many names you can look at with these teams. So I'm so glad that the NFL put this on Sunday Night Football. I think it was a no-brainer as well. So yeah, I'll let Nahum analyze before I give my prediction.
I was gonna say I'm at 2% on my MacBook, so I was gonna make this really brief.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I mean, you guys, both of y'all, excellent. As far as like the outlook on it. I was just gonna say, as a non-Vikings fan, this is gonna be a really fun game to watch.
yeah.
I don't have to stress about it, so it's gonna be
Perfect.
fun. I think the Vikings will sneak by and get this win, just because the Lions are so depleted. But this is more than a like a regular season game, and this is damn near more than a playoff game to me. Like this is something that where like all the meat's in. You know what I'm saying? Because whoever gets this win gets a whole week off, and that's a big deal. So
And the home field advantage, all of that.
mm-hmm.
It's crazy stakes. Crazy
Yeah.
stakes.
Could be a little
We're gonna see
NFC
if
Championship preview.
Darnold deserves the money.
Who?
Facts.
We're gonna see
Sam
if
Darnold.
Sam Darnold deserves the money.
I mean, this is the game to prove it, but he's done a bunch of proving it this whole year. So yeah, no, the
Yeah.
stakes are crazy. But I'm gonna assume me and Yosef probably predict the Vikings to win. So so I think we can just move on past that. Um, but finally here, let's do the upset picks for week 18.
Yeah,
Mine's is I have the Bengals beating Pittsburgh. I think at Pittsburgh, they're favored. Are they favored? Shit, I might be wrong. I think last time I checked, they were favored. I don't know if the lines moved recently, but
The
they're really
Bengals are
close.
favored.
The Bengals are favored. You know what? I think the Steelers are gonna win. Their defense. We'll see if they can put up the points again.
Okay. Now,
I got Broncos over Chiefs.
okay.
Obvious. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not underdogs, but I mean, I got the Giants over the Eagles. Unfortunately, even though I don't want that to happen, but it's gonna happen.
Of course.
Yeah, no, I can see that happening in Philly. My pick, I'm gonna say, oh well, I guess it's convenient. I'm saying Vikings over Lions, 2.5 point underdogs. The Vikings are. I think they're gonna come into Ford Field and get the job done.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. We can close it off there. Don't want the laptop to die, but yeah, episode 109 in the books for the finale podcast. Appreciate you guys having you on as always. I'll be sure to get back to you when it comes to the playoff schedule for podcasts. Of course, want to hear you
Right.
guys' takes on everything that's to come. But yeah, let's hope for a Vikings win. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time.
Yes, sir.
Let's go.